Welcome to Posca Club. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to draw a monster. The reason I like drawing monsters is because it doesn't really matter if you make too many mistakes in them. It'll all look better because the weirder a monster looks, the better it looks as well. Also, there's going to be quite a lot of flexibility in this monster as well. So even though I'm going to show you how to draw 3 eyes, you can go and put 10 eyes in if you want to. I'm going to put 2 mouths in. You can put as many mouths in as you want. Same with noses and ears and things like that. So feel free to elaborate on this monster as much as you want. So let me show you what colors we're going to use because we've got lots of colors to use in today's session. There we go. That is what we're using now. You don't have to have the same colors as me, so don't panic if you haven't got the same colors. Just grab some colors that you want to use in your monster. I'll just quickly explain what we're using all of these colors for though. So right at the top here we've got lavender and lilac. I'm using that is a highlight color and a shadow color, so a low light color as well. So we're going to use those two. They're going to be the main colors that we're going to draw the fur in. So next down we're going to go into the eyes. So I'm just going to do the eyelids. So I'm not going to use these too much, but a sky blue and a light blue, again a shadow color and a highlight color in there, sky blue and light blue for the eyelids. Now next down is the eyeballs. I'm going to do the eyeballs in a yellow, sorry, but then some irises in orange. But again, you can use just white if you want to for this one, or whatever color you've got. Down a little bit further, we're going to have some arms and legs hanging out. I'm going to use a coral pink and raspberry. Again, a highlight color and a low light color, or a shadow color in there. Coral pink and raspberry. Getting into the mouth, we're using red and ruby red. Highlight, shadow. You can see the pattern coming up here, can't you? And then again in the mouth for the teeth, we've got a white for the teeth. Gray is just for a little shadow. It's just going to set the teeth a little bit further back into the mouth. Finish off with a black Posca pen. I'm going to probably use 3M for my black outlining towards the end of the session. But you use whatever thickness you want, depending on how big you're drawing as well. Most of these pens you can see are 5M pens, so quite fat, so we can get the colouring in done quite quickly. There is a couple of 3Ms in there as well, but it doesn't specifically matter whether you've got 3Ms or 5Ms. I prefer 5Ms because we're doing big bits of colouring in, and it will get us a lot further, a lot quicker if we use those bigger pens. Okay, so let's just park these out of the way a little bit so we can show you what canvas I'm going to use. So I've just got this like scrap piece of card. It's got a nice cover to it, nice sheen to it, so you can tell it's had a bit of a protective covering over the top, and that's going to make it really nice and easy to draw on with these Posca pens. If you're unsure of whether your cardboard is going to work, then just find a little section, just give it a little color, just to make sure you don't get any pilling, because that's where the fibers of the canvas just can't start getting pulled up by the pen. So just double check that before you go too far into doing your drawing, because you want to make sure that's not really happening. Otherwise, it will just ruin the experience for you. Again, so I'm using a cardboard rather than an Art Deco freestyle sketchbook, which I use quite a lot. The reason I'm using cardboard is I just want something, an independent piece that I can probably just take away, cut out a little bit more, and shape a little bit better. So yeah, let's go and get on with our drawing, shall we? So I'm going to do all of my guidelines using a yellow pen. Now the reason I'm using yellow is one, so you can see it, and it's two, because pencils are for losers, so we don't want to use pencils too much. Pencils you're always able to rub out with a pencil. You can't really do that with a pen, so using a pen straight in just helps you keep moving forward, rather than with a pencil where you think, oh, I could just rub that line out and take a step backwards. And so, yeah, I would encourage you, as we're doing this, just to keep on moving forward as well. If you think you've made a mistake, don't worry about it. Just keep ploughing forward. Any mistakes, leave them to dry, fix them later, or just manipulate them the best way you can. Sometimes the best ideas come out of any mistakes that you might make. Okay, let's go and put some guidelines on. So I'm going to put this monster, it's going to be like the tip of a sausage kind of shape. It's going to be over here somewhere. I'm going to go too big. Let's go for something like this. Let's go. There you go. There's the tip of my monster. I'm going to give it a bit of a skirt down the bottom here. Little bouncy line down the bottom there. Up top, let's quickly move up top. We're going to put some eyes in. So like I said before, I'm just going to put 3 eyes in, but feel free to put as many eyes in as you want on here. We're going to have one eye about here. Look, let's put another eye over here, and one just peeping out the top there. There's our 3 eyes. Next, we're going to put in, let's go and put in the arms. We want to get the arms out of the way with before we put the mouths in. So arms, I'm going to put one arm is going to be like a sausage shape, like a snooker ball in a sock kind of shape. So let's go from here to about there. So this arm, the character is, you might have noticed already, character's kind of looking that way a little bit. So this arm is going to be around the front. We're going to do a similar arm to that. We're just going to flip it over, put it this side, but this arm's going to be around the back. So it's going to start about there to about there. We'll probably add some fingers to those arms later, but there's no rush on doing that yet. Where are we next? Let's go and just put some little stumps in for legs. Nothing too complicated down here. Again, we'll add some little toes in there later if we fancy it. What next? Let's chuck in a couple of mouths next. So again, our character is looking that way a little bit, so I'm going to put both mouths kind of looking that way a little bit. So let's put a smiley mouth in first. Just think like a happy sausage shape. That's what I call it. In just there. Let's give it some lips like that. Nice mouth. Let's go and give it another mouth. Like that. And last part to add in on this would be a tongue. We're going to go and put in a tongue on this character. So let's go for about here. So we're going to come from the back of the mouth. We're going to go through the center of the tongue first. So it's going to go like this, from the back of the mouth, just flicking down like that. So it's just, that's going from the back of the mouth, center of the tongue. So the rest of the tongue is going to go around that. So what we're going to do is essentially we're going to take that line that we've just done there. We're going to repeat it. We're just going to move it over about 1 inch, about 2 centimeters or so. So it's like this. And then when you get to that point, so you repeated that line, when you get to that point, we're going to pivot around the center of the tongue there. So all the way around. And then we're going to repeat that line again. This time we're just going to bring it up to the back of the mouth. So we're going to go up like this. And a little flick just there. So we've got a wavy tongue sticking out as well. Now, the intention behind this video is that I'm going to work a bit faster, a bit more in depth than my usual Posca Club classes. The live ones are normally a little bit slower paced. So you might find that you have to pause this video every now and then. So feel free to pause if I go too far ahead for you. But we will try and keep to a 1 hour limit as well, okay? Right, there's your guidelines. Everybody got those guidelines in? As soon as you've got that, we can start adding in some color. Now, my process is that we just throw on loads of color first. Don't think about it too much, just chuck on loads of color. It's all about making a bit of a mess. And then towards the end of the session, that's when we can start to add little bits of, change those colors a little bit or move them around a little bit, add a little bit of finesse to them. But for the time being, just chuck the color on, see what looks good, what doesn't look good, and then take it from there. So what we're going to do is, so if you remember what I said was the arms and legs I'm going to do, and the lips, in fact, I'm going to do with these coral pink and raspberry. So coral pink being the highlight, raspberry being the shadow color. So my technique is always to go in with the shadows first. And also, when I'm drawing with Posca, I'll always do whatever's going to be at the back first. So, for example, this arm is at the front. Going to leave that till right at the end before I do that part, but this arm is definitely at the back, and these legs are definitely at the back. They're behind this little skirt that this character's wearing, so they're the bits that we're going to go and do first. So if you're ready, let's go and do it. We're going to put in a shadow, so let's pretend where should we have the light coming from. Let's have the light coming from this direction. Now let's have the light coming from this direction, shall we? That way the character's kind of facing the sun a little bit. So if the light's coming from this direction, just draw in where you'd expect to see all the shadows. So on this arm, I'd expect to see a bit of a shadow in about there. On the legs here, that's where I'd see the shadow. Again, don't worry about how neat it is at the moment. We can add a little bit of neatness to it later. Also with these shadows, the reason I put shadows on first is because when I put the highlight on afterwards, I can really sharpen out these edges. See where they're quite fat, big 5M edges just there. I can sharpen those out a little bit later. Let me just quickly zoom in so you can have a proper look at where these shadows are going, okay? There we go. That's much better. The other thing is I'd expect to see a shadow being cast by the skirt of this monster. I'm not going to draw that in that yet, though. I'm going to draw that in later after I put the highlight of the skin in. So they are at the back. So we'll leave that to dry for a few seconds, and then we'll go and grab the coral pink. And what we're going to do now is add the highlights color. So let's start over here. This and watch this in particular down here when we get to this point, how we can just sharpen it all out. So we're going over that line, look. Sharpen it out just there. See how that original yellow now is disappearing completely? Kind of what we want. We don't want to be able to see any of that. That yellow was there just as a guide. So you can see the shape that we're getting from that arm now, yeah? Let's go and do the same with the legs. Now, at this stage, you might notice that some of your colouring in is a little bit streaky, especially if you're working on cardboard. And if you haven't primed your pen enough, so if you haven't mixed up the paint, shaken it enough, and press the nib down to get your nib full of fresh paint, you might notice your artwork's looking a little bit streaky or your colouring in's a little bit streaky. If that is the case, don't panic. It just means you need to give it another coat a little bit later on. Also, you might not even need to do that, because as soon as we put the black outlines on, the contrast will change on there. So what becomes quite an obvious streaking now, eventually later on when you get the black outlines, will kind of just die off into the background a little bit, so you won't really notice them too much. Okay, last little bit that we're going to do, we're going to go back down to these legs. And remember I said about the shadow that's being cast by this bouncy little skirt that we've got down here. So let's go and put that in now. So something like that will do. Not going to see any more shadows on that section. That bit's fine like that. There we go. We've got some arms in. Let's go and work on, what are we working on next? Stuff right at the back. So let's maybe do the teeth, shall we? We're going to white out some teeth. Then we're going to add a little shadow on. You could do the shadow first if you wanted to, but in this instance, I'm going to white out the teeth, add a little shadow, and the shadow is just going to send the teeth just a few centimeters back into the mouth. Well, that's the plan anyway. So are you ready? Let's go and do it. Let's start with the teeth at the top there. You can go for as many teeth as you want. Again, this is where you get a little bit of flexibility in your artwork. You can go for round teeth, square teeth, triangular teeth, loads of teeth, just a few teeth, uneven, whatever you want. But let's go and put some teeth in. I'm going to keep it quite simple. Little kind of pointy tooth, but not too pointy. And then do the same down here. One there, one on the other side. Try to avoid putting any teeth that overlap or go down the bottom next to the tongue. If you want to do teeth down the bottom, just have them over here or over here, but avoid that bit if you can. Let's go and work in the back of the mouth now. So again, we're doing the things right at the back first whilst we're waiting for this white to dry, because we're going to put a little shadow on there. Let's go and do the back of the mouth. The back of the mouth, we're going to draw, I'm going to colour it in ruby red, the darker of the two reds that I've got. If you want, you can just do this in black, though, if you haven't got ruby red. But up this top part here, look. If your white from the teeth is still wet, then just get as close as you can to them without touching them. We are going to have a black outline around it later. So it doesn't matter if the join between the two is absolutely perfect, because the black outline will kind of cover over any of those joins. So here we go, around the tongue, around the teeth, around the tongue. Going over those yellow lines, getting rid of those yellow lines. That's if you use yellow lines. Probably should have said right at the start, if you wanted to use pencil, you could use pencil. I don't mind. But the beauty of Posca pens is that you don't need to use a pencil. You can just use a normal pen, knowing full well that the colours will go over the top of each other. There we go. How's that looking? Right, let's carry on. Where's that grey? Let's go and grab that grey. We're going to add a little tiny shadow to the teeth now. In fact, there's two shadows you can add. One is a shadow being cast by the lips. That's what's going to send the teeth back into the mouth. The other is the shadow that is the shape of the teeth as well. So you can really mess around with the shape of the teeth on this one. Again, let me zoom in, show you what I mean. So the one that's being cast by the lips would be a line like that. And again, you can see actually it's starting to work already. You can see how it's just sending those teeth a little bit further back. The other shadow is the one that is created by the shape of the teeth. So if you wanted your teeth to look really round, you'd do quite a big shadow from the tip there into the middle of the tooth. If you want to make your teeth look quite flat, then just a smaller shadow like this. It's going to do the same with the teeth down the bottom here. Not the same, just something similar. Let's not make it too difficult for ourselves by trying to get everything looking exactly right. And again, don't worry if the edges look a little bit ropey. At this stage, it doesn't matter. We're going to have some black outlines going on there. There will be no black outline between the white and the grey, though. That's a bit that's important. Between the red and the white and the red and the grey, there will be a black outline. But between the white and the grey, there won't, because that's a shade change or tone change that we're seeing there. So make sure you get those bits right, I guess is what I'm saying. There we go. Let's move on a little bit more. I think we can start thinking about the eyes next. So let's go and work into the eyes, because that'll be the next thing that I want the eyelids and the eyeballs to look like they're a little bit further behind this bit of fur. So we'll go and do that. So we are going to add little eyelids down to the bottom of the eyeballs. So go and grab, yeah, let's grab your sky blue and light blue. That's going to be your eyelid color. Let's also grab that yellow, which is going to be your eyeball color. So first thing, with the yellow, let's go and draw in where the eyelid is going to live. I'm just going to do nice skinny eyelids. Look down the bottom here like this. Little tiny curves, little skinny eyelids. That one at the top, we're going to leave that for the time being, because what we're going to do on the top one is it's going to have a little bit of fur. It's going to be coming out from the fur. There's not going to be any eyelid on that one. Down the bottom here, though, let's go and put where the iris is going to live. This is just so that we don't have to bother colouring that bit in. I'm probably going to have the iris over here on both sides, so that my character is looking over there, because I've got all this space over here. I can probably just draw something over here later to fill that gap. And then the rest of the eyeball, let's colour that in yellow. Now, like I was saying earlier, some of these colours will look a little bit streaky when you're colouring in. Yellow is definitely in that category of streaky looking colours. So don't try and colour it in twice now, or don't try and keep going over the same area. Just give it one coat, let it dry, come back, give it another coat. These Posca pens are not like normal pens, where the more you go over it, the darker it gets. All that's going to happen is if you keep on going over it, you're going to start ruining the canvas or the paper that's underneath. Or worse still, you're going to start scratching up the paint that is half dry on there. Let's go and put an iris on this one, about there, and we're going to do the whole eyeball. Next section, grabbing that darker blue, whichever darker shade you're going to use for the eyelid. Let's go and add the shadow. So we're going to see a shadow light. Remember, light's coming in from this direction, so you're going to see a shadow round about here. Round about there. You get the make sure you get the shadow bigger than you really need it, because we can go a little bit smaller with it when we add the highlight. Okay, so it doesn't matter if you go a little bit overboard with the shadows at this stage. Let's go back into the eyeball. Go and grab your orange, whatever color you're using for your iris, and let's go and color the iris in. Again, orange, similar to yellow, does sometimes need a couple of coats for you to get really opaque. And what you'll notice, what I'm doing here, this is a technique you want to get into as much as possible. What I'm doing here is just going backwards and forwards with some of these pieces of artwork, so, or the sections of the artwork. So for example, you noticed I started the yellow in there, then I moved to a separate section to do the blue, then I moved back to the orange, and now I'm going to move back down here to the blue in the eyelid again. The reason I'm doing that is I'm just trying to give things enough time to dry, but still keeping it moving along. What you don't really want to do with Posca pens is have two wet colors touching each other. You want to give it a chance to dry. Otherwise, what you get is a little bit of bleeding, which isn't a problem. You can sometimes use bleeding to a really nice effect, and blending with Posca pens is something we'll go through at a later stage. But in this particular section, or in this particular video, what I really want us to do is have it looking nice and neat. Sharp lines. Do I need to? Yes, let's just give that. Now let's do the light blue. So light blue now, sky blue for the bottom of the lid, light blue for the top of the lid, top of the bottom eyelid, if that makes any sense. Worth me pointing out as well that You don't have to press hard with these pens. Just a gentle tickle will be enough to get the paint out of the barrel onto the canvas. Again, with normal pens, the harder you press, the more comes out. That's not the case with these ones. The nib on these pens is quite coarse, so the harder you press, the more chance you're going to have of pulling up some of the canvas underneath. Just give that a few seconds to dry, because I want to go back in with the yellow, just do a little bit more work on the yellow. Okay, it's looking good. Let's go and work on, yeah, let's go and let's put a little bit more yellow. I just want to put a little bit more yellow on those eyeballs, just to make them really pop out. Looking very streaky at the moment. Like I say, you will sometimes, it's just normal, you will sometimes need to put in a couple of coats on some of these colours to get it looking really opaque. If you do need to give something 2 coats, just, you know, make sure the undercoat is dry first. Wet on wet won't really make it any darker, and wet on kind of semi-dry will just start scraping up some of your semi-dry paint and make it all messy. So wait for it to dry is my advice. Don't forget to prime your pen every now and then. It's worth having a little sheet of cardboard handy or a piece of paper for you to prime your pen on. Priming isn't about shaking your pen. Priming is about just pressing the nib into the barrel to collect more paint. You need to do that regular, especially if you're using like the Art Gecko Freestyle Sketchbook, which really pulls the paint out. That's why the sketchbook has such a nice effect, because it pulls the paint out, but it does mean your nib dries out quite quickly. So you've got to be careful of that. Okay, next section. What should we work on next? Let's. I think it's going to be the fur next of our character. So remember, the colours I said I was going to use for the fur are the lavender and lilac. Lavender and violet will work just as well. Lilac's just a little bit lighter, which is why I'm going to go with that one. Take the shadow colour first. I'm going to add all the shadows on. Then we're going to add the highlights on. Then we can add some extra details later. So again, thinking about where the sun's coming from, then we know the shadow's going to be all the way down the back here, underneath here, and then maybe some little shadows underneath the eyeballs, underneath the lips, that kind of thing. Okay. One thing to be aware of, this arm is going to stick out here, so let's not bother colouring that bit in with the shadow colour of the fur, so that we can just go straight over the top with that pink when we get to it. So yeah, my technique is, let's outline the shadow first. So I think there'll be a little shadow there. Coming down here, look, as we go across these feet, we're going to start chopping out some of these shapes all the way to the tongue. Don't go through the tongue, because we don't need to mess that bit up. Again, thinking about where the shadow is going to be, how fat our character is. Let's just go and bring that up. And let's bring that up to the lip, actually. All the way around. Follow the shape of the tongue. There's our first shadow. Let's go and outline a few more shadows though before we get on with anything else. So this eyeball, I think, is going to have a shadow on it. This eyeball. And this one as well. fact, what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to bring this eyeball. I'm going to bring a bag just there. Look. So it just pops outside the head a little bit, just there. That'll look quite nice. Let's work down into the lips. I'm going to expect to see shadows underneath these lips. So all the way across there. And same just here. Let's just make that a little bit bigger. Little shadow there. Maybe a little bit under the armpit there as well. Anywhere you think there's going to be a shadow, go and draw it in first, and then we'll colour it in second. So we're at that stage now where we can just start colouring in. And chuck that colour on there. But remember, we are at that stage of just kind of making a mess still. Chucking all the colour on, seeing where it lands, seeing what it looks like, tidy it all up a little bit later. You see, I'm trying to work top to bottom, left to right, because I'm right-handed and there's less chance of me smudging anything. If you're left-handed, then just work the other way around as you're doing this. You just want to try and keep your hand out of the wet paint. The wet paint it only takes a few seconds to dry, but just want to be careful you don't smudge anything. It's not the end of the world, though. If you do smudge anything, regulars in the Korp Academy will know that what I usually do is if there's a smudge somewhere, if it's on your artwork, you can just wait for it to dry and colour it in with the original colour again. If it's off your artwork somewhere here, then you can just draw something over the top of it. Incorporate it in, even if it's just a little fly or an insect hanging around. There we go. We've got our shadow colours in. That's looking good. Give that a few seconds to dry because we are now going to go in with the highlight colour for the fur. This is a lavender colour, works really nice with the lilac. And here we go. This is where, so like these bits at the top here, you can see where that is quite. There we go. That's better. That is quite a fat bit just there. That's a 5M nib that's created that. So as we go over with this 5M, see how we just sharpen it out so it's a real sharp point there. So that shadow just dies into nothing. That is the effect that we're going for, okay? Up the top here, again, like I've done, put a little bag down the bottom. I'm going to put a little bag at the top as well. So like that. Let's not interfere with the lips too much. We're going to go around the lips. We're going to see a little bit of light colour in there. Let's go around this eyeball whilst we're here, look. Around the lips. Just remember to go outside the shadow all the time. Into this little tricky bit down here. Back up to the arm, and we'll just chop that arm off just there. Doesn't need to be particularly neat there. We can add a little bit of a scruffy line or something to make it look like there's a bit of fur hanging over the top of the arm. But there you go. Highlight part is now outlined, so let's go and colour that in. Remembering as you're colouring in not to go over the same section too many times. You kind of, if it's wet, leave it to dry. Move on. Even if it looks patchy, just move on. The worst thing you can be doing is keep on working on a wet area with more wet. Just going to make the whole thing look untidy. Okay, it's looking good. Let's go and work on the lips next. Lips, I'm going to do the lips in the same color as the arm, so I'm going to do this arm as well. And again, it's a case of putting in the shadow and then putting in the highlight. So we're going with the shadow color. If you remember, we used coal pink and raspberry. Raspberry being our shadow color, so we're going to use that bit first. Let's start off over here. So we know that light's coming in from this direction. So this bit is going to be the shadow. All the way around here. Just that bit, I think. On the lips, it becomes a little bit trickier. So as we do the lips, because the light source is above, we're going to draw the shadow on the bottom of the top lip and the bottom of the bottom lip. Okay. So you see that bit there, that's the top lip. It's on the bottom of the top lip. Go and put a shadow in. Bottom of the bottom lip. No shadow in. Let's do the same for this bottom mouth. So the bottom of the top lip first. Don't worry if your shadow's looking a little bit fat and cumbersome. We can change those a little bit later when we put the highlight color on. And then the bottom of the bottom lip. Take it all the way to the tongue, no further though. There we go. All our shadows are in for lips and front arm. Once that's dry, give it a few seconds to dry. Go and grab your coral pink, your highlight color. And let's go and put in the highlights of these. So let's go in here. Look. See how it's just chopping over those colors and just making them disappear. The main reason I use Posca pens is that ability to cover over the previous sections of the drawing, previous colors. Gives you some interesting effects, but also is very forgiving if you make any mistakes in your artwork. Now, when it comes to getting back onto the lips, we're going to do the highlights now. So we're going to do the top of the top lip and the top of the bottom lip. But this time they are going to join up, and we are going to take the edges of these shadows and really taper them off. So just there and just there, you see the edges of those shadows, going to taper them off as much as possible. So let's go and do that. So here we go around this side, look, just taper it off. So that line that becomes the top part of the lip just seamlessly becomes the top of the bottom lip as well. what you should start seeing is just the shape of the lip. The lip looking a little bit rounder, a bit more 3D. It'll look a lot better when we've got the black outlines on as well, because then you'll differentiate between the shape and the shadow, because at the moment we've got a few different colors in here. It's difficult for your eyes to figure out what is what. As soon as you put a black outline on, it kind of frames it. It says, right, these are the lips. This is separate to the teeth. This is separate to the rest of the body, that kind of thing. So here we go. Let's go and do the bottom set of lips. Remember that line there, look. As we're touching the shadow on the top, seamlessly joins in and becomes the bottom part, or the top of the bottom part of the lip. Work around this side, just tapering off. Tapering off all those shadows. Last section then. Last section of the main part of colouring in. How's it looking? See, it's getting there. It's getting there. It's looking good. Let's go and work on the tongue next. So the two colours for the tongue: not raspberry red, ruby red. Ruby red, which we've already used before as the back of the mouth, comes back into play. That's going to be the shadow colour of the tongue. And then just the regular red. It's a nice creamy red that Posca make, which is going to be the main part of the tongue. So we're going with the shadow colour first, the darker part. And again, think about where your light source is coming from. So therefore, where your shadows are going to live. So the shadows are all going to be down the back here and underneath the tongue. So around here, look. In fact, let me zoom in a little bit so you can have a proper look at how this is working out. That little bit there, that's kind of inside the mouth. And then as we come down, we're going to start chopping out all of these. See how messy this bit looks around here? We're going to chop out all of that. It's going to make the whole thing look a lot tidier. There we go. Let's bring it back up. There we go. Give that a few seconds, then we'll go in with the regular red. In fact, we can probably start doing this side of the tongue first. We are going to lose this middle bit where we put that yellow line in. We're going to lose that a little bit. We are going to put a black line in over there eventually. So if you want to keep it in, that yellow line there, so that you know where it is, then just leave a little gap. So as you do your colouring in, leave a little gap like that. You see where there's just a little slither of yellow in there. That just shows us roughly where our black line needs to be when we put our black line back in. There you go. You can just see that little tiny yellow line. All the other yellow lines, though, you know, the leg, the body, that's all going to disappear. Just chop out that part of the shadow lump. Should be dry now, so we can go and touch colours. Quite a nice shape, that tongue. Usually I'd go a lot simpler with the tongue shapes, but that's looking good. Okay, let's see how we're looking there then. We are just about getting there. Just a couple of more bits I'm going to change on this a little bit to make it a little bit more interesting. So for example, let's go and grab that lavender, that color that we've used, this light color here. We're going to just take a few little chunks out the eyes and things like that. just gives our character a little bit more, makes it a little bit more interesting. So, for example, this one, let's go and take a little chunk out just there. Look. We're going to play around with this eye. We're going to make it look a little bit more attached. So let's do that with a little line going underneath like this. Around the eyeball. And that'll do. That'll do nicely for the time being. Let's make this character look a little bit furrier. So we're just going to give it a few little spikes. Nothing too much. A couple of little spikes just there. Change over to your lilac color. Let's go and give it a few little spikes down the back as well. A few little bits of hair in there. We could probably even bring in a few on this side. So watch this, just here, look. And we will come back to that. We'll use those colors again to add some more little shapes later, but that's good to start us off with. What else should we do? Let's go and add those little fingers. Remember we said about adding little fingers and toes to our character. So go and grab your raspberry. I'm going to imagine that all the fingers and toes are kind of hidden in the shadow areas. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a thumb first. So just over this side, look. There's a thumb. That thumb also becomes a finger. So if we curl it around like that, see how it just looks like a D shape or a C shape, a bubble writing C, sausage shape, that kind of thing. Going to put a couple more fingers in. Color all of that in. Just try and do this something similar over the other side. It might be hidden behind the tongue quite a bit. It's handy. It saves us a lot of work. So the thumb and the forefinger first, which just live over here. And then the extra two fingers round on the toes. We're going to do the same kind of thing on the toes. So we've got a big toe, a little toe. Sorry. Number 1 toe, number 2 toe, 3, 4. Yeah. 1, 2 there, all become one, like L shape. 3, 4. Gives a definite look of something like that kind of look where we're kind of separating out the thumb from the fingers when you do it that way. Okay, how's it looking? I think this is looking good. Next stage for me now is as soon as I've chucked loads of color on, I'll just go and add in loads of black outlines. Now, when we come to adding these black outlines, we will probably taper some of them out a little bit later. So don't worry if they are looking a little bit messy. You can sort of tidy up the edges of the black outlines. So for example, down here in the tongue, that part there would need to be tapered, really thin, sharp point, like a pinprick at the bottom there. You can either do that by flicking off the pen, or you can do it by letting it dry and going back over with the red and just tapering it out a little bit. Now, when it comes to colouring in, I usually start at the back of the character and work my way forward. When it comes to outlining, I start at the front of the character and work my way backwards. In fact, just there's a couple more bits I want to do. Do I want to do this? No, I'm going to leave it. I was thinking about just putting a little bit of fur around the outside of the lips there, but I don't think we're going to need it. We can make a call on that later. But yeah, let's go and add these outlines on now. So what we're going to do is go straight in with the tongue. So that's the closest thing to us. So starting at the back here, let's go for a line from there that wiggles across there. Now, one of my favorite techniques is to double line everything I do. That doesn't mean making the line twice as thick. It means making the line twice as wonky. Main reason for that is because wonky lines are easier to draw, and I think they look better as well. So you'll enjoy the process of drawing a lot more if you're not kind of restrained by the fact that you're always trying to draw smooth lines. So let's try and draw wonky lines. So I'll just go over that again. Make it a bit wonkier. See how wonky that line looks now? Let's go over the next part of the tongue. So we're going to go through this bit all the way around the rest of the tongue. Don't forget to double line it. The other thing to be mindful of when you're double lining is intersections. So see where that line joins into that one, like in a T junction. It's like that joins into like that. That is an intersection. You always want to make those intersections a little bit thicker. Just holds your artwork together a bit better. Where you see those intersections. Okay, tongue looking good. We'll come back and we'll taper that off a little bit later, but let's go around the lips now. So be careful with these lips. We want to do the inner mouth and then we'll do the outer mouth. So watch this. This is where the inner mouth is going to go. So don't get caught out by the shadows on the lips. They will kind of catch you out a little bit if you're not careful. Just double line it. Strong intersection there. Double line around the other side. And again, another strong intersection there. And then we can go around the outer lip. Looking good. We're going to put some more thinner lines on there. So have a PC1M handy, because we are going to put some thinner lines on those lips to really double up the shape of the lips. Let's go around the teeth next. There we go. Looking good. Now, without smudging, one of the things you will notice is that when I'm drawing, I don't move my canvas around. That's not for my benefit. That's for your benefit. So it looks good on camera, and you don't have to kind of figure out which way the canvas is facing. But from your point of view, if you need to twist your canvas around to use the natural curve with your wrist or with your arm, then feel free to do that. But I'm going to always keep it as straight as possible for you. Right, let's go and do the inner mouth again. On the top mouth. Double line it. Outer mouth. Double lining. You'll be surprised at how much double lining, how much wonkiness you can get away with when you get started, especially if you keep it consistent. The only consistent thing about your lines should be how inconsistent they are. Much more fun way of drawing. Around the teeth. Awesome. Let's move up into the eyeballs now, shall we? First thing I want to do on the eyes is just throw in a pupil on each one, because we are going to have a little white reflection on the top of that black pupil. So we want to give it the maximum amount of time to dry. So let's quickly put in some sort of black pupil in the center of each iris. Give that a little bit of time to dry, and then we'll go and do the rest of the eyes. I'm going to start the eye at the top first, work my way down. So we're changing things up on this one a little bit. Watch this. What we're going to do is we're going to do this bottom. It's not an eyelid, it's where the fur is kind of covering the eye over here. So you see just a little double-ended flick off, just slightly past the eyeball. Slightly past the eyeball on either side, so that when we do the actual eyeball, here we go, look. Got these little overlaps either side. The reason we've got those little overlaps either side is so that we can do this next line, which is where we start on the eyeball and we do like a little fold of skin that goes around. Now, we've kind of got it here on this side where that shadow is. So let's start about there. And then do something similar on this side. So it starts there, goes round that line. Just a little flick down into that section. Look. We'll taper that line off as well. If you can't taper, if you can't flick and get a thin line, one of the things you can do is just do little dots like that. It's a nice little technique for making something look like there's a bit of a crease in there. Okay, let's go and outline this side. We're going to take that section out of the top there. Remember, we cut that bit out. Let's go and cut that out again. Then we can go around the eyeball, including the eyelid, all the way around there. Look. Double line it, strong intersections, make it wonky. Then the eyelid. That'll do for now. It's going to do the other one with it. This eye, we're just going to go straight around the eyeball, including the eyelid. Double line it. So you can see, like, double lining, one of the reasons I do it, you see where my pen just naturally just missed that bit out. And so now I've got this like bit of grey cardboard just sticking out where I should have a yellow eyeball or a black line. So that's why I double line everything. It just makes it a lot more forgiving. So when I come to that section, I just make that bit of the line a little bit thicker. And nobody else is going to know, just us, that is what happened there. Everyone else is just going to think it's that normal kind of consistent wonky line that we're drawing. Around the eyeball. Now, remember we put bags at the top and the bottom of this. Let's draw those bags in as well. So we're going to start inside the head. We're going to have a strong intersection in there as well. Moving down, next bit that was closest to us was, I think, this arm. So let's go and do that. Now, the thing to remember with this arm is that we've got some thumbs and fingers to deal with in there as well. So what I'm going to suggest we do is we start with the thumb, outline all the fingers, and then we're going to work back up the arm. So let me show you. That's better. So starting with the thumb, and then the finger. See how we overlap a little bit? Just double line it, make it wonky. So this part, this inside part of the arm is just going to sit behind that line just there, look. Add in our other fingers. And then this back finger is going to sit behind the arm. So we'll start about there, look. Just trying to give those thumbs and fingers a little bit more shape. Just bring that line a little bit further in like that. That looks better. If you remember, we said we were going to figure out how we're going to do this. Let's go and put a little line in. Like that. It's got a little point to it. So even though that was a straight line with the lavender, we can still use the thickness of the black line to hide that straight line under a bent line. So go add that in, and then what we'll do is we'll go around the whole character. So we're going around the fur this time. So let's start over here. That's a nice easy bit, look. Just put that bit in there. Double-ended, thick off. That means it's quite fat either end because we've got two intersections. And then working your way around. As you flick down, just flick back into the skin, into the fur a little bit more. Keep on working your way around. Little short flick back in. Strong intersections, that kind of stuff. You can see how these little overlaps just look really nice. Working your way down. So we're just flicking those lines in. They might look a little bit fat at the moment. That's fine. We can taper those off later. Work down the character. Around that skirt. Maybe some of these parts of the skirt, look, we're going to have little overlaps. Up into these little sections here. Again, don't be afraid to make it bumpier, even though they were straight lines. They were straight lines just there. Make them a little bit wonkier. It's going to suit the character. Okay, let's go and do the legs next. So start off with those toes. Main two first, then the smaller ones. Stumpy little legs coming up here, look. Double-ended thick offs. Looks good. Zoom in a little bit more. So again, over here, look. Starting with the thumb toe. I'm going to call it a thumb toe, you know what I mean. Double line it, nice and wonky. Thumb toe, next toe, baby toe. Baby toe sits behind the leg. Like that. Move over to this one. This one's going to be a little bit trickier to do. So we've got this bit which sits in front. Lots of it sitting behind the tongue there. Saves us a bit of hassle with having to draw another hand. Hands are the worst thing to draw. Nice wonky line at the top there. Pen's running out a bit. If you're using a 3M black, loads of people have told me about this. 3M blacks, they do kind of, the nib dries up quite quick. So just remember to keep it primed. Draw gently. Lines come out a little bit thick that side, so I'm just going to make it a little bit thicker on this side to balance that out a little bit. Awesome. It's looking good. A couple more bits to add on, then we'll finish off our character. So main thing I'm going to do is just go and add in some bits that can be cut out later, and then we're going to do loads of cutting out. Cutting out is my favorite technique. It's where you put in like a lavender color, then you go with the lilac on top, and then you use that lavender color again to cut out over the top. So the lilac, this bit becomes real fine thin line. So for example, I'm going to go with this lilac. I'm going to put in these kind of shapes, just a load of little V's here and there. Don't think about it too much, just chuck them in, knowing that we'll cut them out a little bit later. Let's go into the tongue and the arms and go and add in some little bits in there. So I'm going to keep it quite simple on the arms. I'm just going to add in some little spots. Keep the forearms free because we're going to put some hair on there. There we go, some little spots in there, maybe some little spots in the mouth as well. Back on with this. Let's just put in some random bits of fur. We can chop all of those out nicely later. Just gives it something interesting to look at. Yeah, into the tongue. Just go and grab that ruby red. Put some little spots on the tongue. We'll add some little white highlights on there later. Don't forget the legs. Good. We'll give that a few seconds to dry. We'll come back to that a little bit later. I don't think we actually talked about using brown, but we are going to use a little bit of brown. So go and grab brown, and let's go and throw in some furry bits on the arms. So what I'm going to do is just a little spring line around here. Look. So a little 3M, just to give us some hairy bits there. Maybe you want to put some hairy bits on the legs as well. That would look good. Let's keep on going. We're going to come back and chop out some of these in a little while, but grab yourself a 1M in black 1M. We'll add some little tiny details to our character. So starting up top, over here in the eyes, look. Some little wrinkles. Around the outside of the eye, just flick the line out every now and then like this, look. Add some extra little bits of fur in there. A little bit scratchy, this 1M, but I kind of like that. Let's move down into the mouth. Two things we're going to do in the mouth. One is right on the edge lip. Flick out a couple of little lines there. Just give that, make it look like there's a bit more of a fold in the edge of the mouth there. The other bit we're going to do is these little lines, look. Little C shapes either side. You can see how they, again, just make the character's lips look so much rounder. Let's put a few little black spots on there as well. Same down the bottom here. Now, it's important to remember, if you do these C shapes in the middle, they're going to be almost straight lines like that. The closer you get to the edge, the rounder they want to be. Don't forget those little flick lines coming out like that. Finish off with some spots. Flick a few lines around the teeth. Make them look a little bit like they've got some graining on them. Maybe even chuck in a little, you might want to chuck in a little tonsil. Is it going to have two throats? Let's give it two throats. Why not? It's a good thing about drawing monsters. You can just make it up as you go along. Let's go into the tongue, add a few little taste buds. Just little bumps. And down the bottom. There we go. Back onto the arms, little black spots on the arms, of course. This is really is where you should just be using your own imagination, just doing whatever you think looks right, what's going to look good. What about some little fingernails? Should we see what that looks like? Not too bad. Let's work back up now. Remember I said about kind of cutting out. We're going to do some cutting out now. So go and grab that lavender. Remember all these little V shapes that we did? We're just going to cut out the edge. So watch the way this V shape changes. Becomes a lot smaller. It becomes a lot more like it's a sharp piece of fur now. So we're going to do that on all of these bits. So they do become a lot smaller, but they will look a lot better as well. Even these bits on the edge, look. Sharpen all of those points off. These black lines, we can sharpen those, taper the ends off of those as well. One of my favourite things is being able to get these real thin lines with fat pens. Just give that a little bit of a bump, look. Make that shadow look a little bit more interesting. Go and grab your lilac. Do the same with the lilac, all these black lines in here. Let's go and sharpen those off. Especially down the bottom here. Just about finished. Let's bring it home now. Last little bit we're going to do, let's go and add some little white reflections and a white border around this character. No time for a background today, but a white border is a definite, just to make it look like a sticker, make it really pop out. We will do some more work on backgrounds in future sessions, so keep an eye out for those. But yeah, what we're going to do now, just grab your white. We're going to put reflections on the tongue, going to make the tongue look nice and wet, but also on the eyes as well. So let's go start off with the eyes. I like doing a few reflections, so I'm going to put one here. Like that. So we know the light's coming in from this direction, so that's why you've got the biggest light source just there. Medium one there, tiny one down there. Let's go make the tongue look a little bit more wet. So we're just going to bring in some little lines there, little white lines on the curve of the tongue. White spots as well here and there. Doesn't really matter where you put them. If you want to make the lips look wet, just go and do the same with the lips. Just put some little strategic wet patches in on that character. And then, yeah, last thing for me is let's go and put a white border around it. So I just need to give it a few seconds to dry. But then a white border around the whole outside edge of the character. For me, this does a couple of things. I think it looks good. Obviously, that's a starting point. It looks good. Makes it look like a sticker, which I think is a nice effect. Also, just kind of finishes off your piece. It tells the person that's looking at it that this is the foreground, this is the background, so it separates the foreground and the background for you. Obviously, this bit you would take as much time as you can over this. Make sure you get it just right. As you get towards the end of a piece of artwork, especially if it's looking okay, you do just want to take your time over it, get it just right. You can always tell I'm concentrating on a line because I go quiet. Usually I have to hold my breath in order to draw a smooth line, or an accurate line, I should say. Smooth is overrated, but accurate. There we go. Normally have to go quiet for. So yeah, that stands out quite nicely like that. I'd probably finish it off with maybe just a few little spots around the outside. Filling in these gaps, bringing a little bit of balance to the artwork. What else? Last little bits now. Let's put a little few spots down here as well. There we go. Bring in these little bits of fur. So let me just zoom in while I'm doing this. I'm just looking around now, just thinking, right, what else does it need? Doesn't necessarily need all of these bits, but I'm going to put them in anyway. Furry bits there, look. Quote marks always look great. Finishing off little bits here and there. Yeah, that's it. I think we should probably leave it at that. I always say that. I always say, let's leave it like that, and then let's get, and I'll just carry on drawing. These fingers, let's go and just finish these better. Nice. Down here, didn't put any toenails in. Should we put toenails in? Awesome. A few little drips. Here and there. That's it. What do you think? I'm quite happy with how that's turned out. So last thing to do, if you like what you've done, sign it. If you don't, put somebody else's name on it. But I'm pretty pleased with that one. So yeah, I love to see how you guys are getting on with your artwork as well. So if you have a go at this artwork, if you draw this little monster character as well, then I'd love to be able to see it. Not only would I love to be able to see it, if you post it online publicly and use the hashtag, what hashtag should we use? Just use the hashtag doodle with Korp. Use that hashtag, post it publicly, and I will select a winner from term 1. So term 1 is 4 sessions. This is the first of the 4 sessions. I'll select a winner after term 1 finishes. So in 4 weeks' time, the winner, whoever's done the best, or I'll judge it, whoever I think has done the best, one of these monsters or one of the other videos, will win, what should we do, 25 quid? 25 quid voucher that you can spend in my shop. So that'll get you a t-shirt. It'll even get you this piece of artwork. You better afford that piece of artwork as well. So 25 quid goes to the winner if you post it online publicly with the Doodle with Korp hashtag. So Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, that kind of place. That's it. So I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you very much for taking part, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video. Cheers, everyone. Bye-bye.